Hi, welcome to another edition of Encountering the Divine. Well, Merry Christmas to you and your family. I pray this is going to be a beautiful season of rest and some refreshment and reflection upon this amazing mystery of God becoming man and dwelling among us. It's just an incredible mystery. Christmas is a wonderful season, but I also recognize that for some folk you have to work and life goes on. But in the midst of the season, I pray that you will find some time to rest, to reflect, to spend with family and friends, and enjoy some Christmas traditions. For us, this year we will have all of our family together on Christmas Day, which is very rare, given our family schedules. Oftentimes we're celebrating and having the family feast and the sharing of gifts the days leading up to or the days after Christmas Day. But this year we get the wonderful blessing of just something special about the 25th of December being our tradition. Well, we're moving along in this epistle of Hebrews. We are now finishing up chapter 11 today. And boy, I've entitled this Faith That Endures Fire and Darkness. It's like, wow. Haza Bibi was a Christian mother in Pakistan that chances are you never ever heard about her until now. And maybe if you're a avid news follower, you would have picked up on it. Haza was a Christian mother in Pakistan. She came to Christ. And when her tribe found out, and she coming from a tribe that was adamantly against Christianity and the Christian faith. She was sentenced to 9 years in prison. Actually, she was sentenced to death, rather, and spent 9 years on death row for refusing to deny her faith in Jesus Christ. She was told she would be spared if she would renounce her faith and return to Islam. She would not do it. She said, I believe Jesus Christ is my Lord, and I am prepared to die for him. She lost almost a decade of her life, and had it not been for worldwide pressure and governmental pressure at highest levels, coming from the United Nations even, but not as much the United Nations as the European nations, some of the European nations and the U.S., she was granted a reprieve and was acquitted in 2018. But even after that, radical groups continued to call for her execution. Her faith cost her everything. She endured the fire and the darkness of that experience, but she never relented. This is Hebrews 11 faith in modern days. You know, we read this from the scriptures and we think, wow, wow, wow. But you know, there are people living this out right this moment as I share with you today. It's not Edwin Rideout. I've never faced anything like it. My life has never been on the line. You know, my reputation, whether some people like me or not like me, yes, for certain stance I take. But, you know, apart from that, it's minor, minimal. This woman endured it. As we pick up today in verse 23, of Hebrews 11. It says, by faith, Moses, when he was born, was hidden for 3 months by his parents because they saw that the child was beautiful, and they were not afraid of the king's headache. By faith, Moses, when he was grown up, refused to be called the son of Pharaoh's daughter, choosing rather to be mistreated with the people of God than to enjoy the fleeting pleasures of sin. He considered the reproach of Christ greater wealth than the treasures of Egypt, for he was looking to the reward. You see, why did Moses have such faith? Why could the writer of the Hebrews make this statement about Moses that we read here today? I believe it's because the kernels of faith were placed in his heart, in his soul, by his parents. It says they were not afraid of the king's edict. They knew their lives were at risk for defying that edict. They were required to throw their baby, their boy, into the river, to let him go, but they refused to do it. And so Then Moses, being raised with that, instilled in that kernel of faith bedded in his heart. And as he began to discover his story, and his story found his way into his heart. He was looked after by his mom for quite a period of time until he had finished nursing. Could have been as much as 2 years. And then I am sure there was connection because he knew his identity. On the 8th day, he would have been circumcised. So he had an identity. He carried a different signal with him, a different sign with him than those in Pharaoh's household. And so he knew his identity right from the beginning. It was embedded in him by his parents, both as a physical sign and a spiritual sign had been embedded in his heart. And so his identity was fixed in his childhood. He knew who he was. And so faith came a natural reaction somewhat because it was already so embedded in his identity. And so even as a young man, he refused to be called one of Pharaoh's. He may have looked somewhat the part, having been with them, and even through his grooming and all the other stuff, he may have had the same kind of access to special privileges that they had, but he refused that. He set that aside. He chose to be identified with his people. Why? Faith. He believed the promise. He believed that his people were a special people, that their God was a special God, and he lived up to that. In verse 27 it says, "By faith he left Egypt, not being afraid of the danger of the king, for he endured as seeing him who was invisible." Now I read this and it's like, this is a different version than I read back in the Old Testament narrative. In the Old Testament narrative, it says after he had slain this one who was abusing a fellow Israelite, that once he knew he was discovered, he fled. Well, what's going on here? Yet Hebrews looks at this through a different lens and says that his actions was an act of faith. So how could his fleeing be an act of faith? Well, that's taken a little digging. And I can't give you all the process, but I will give you the product. Moses fled, Hebrews says, yet he's a hero of faith. Why? You see, faith is not the absence of fear. Oh, don't tell me that the lady who was sentenced to death in Pakistan didn't have fear in her heart. She's human. Faith is choosing God's purpose and God's plan and God's scheme, even when the situation is dangerous. Whether it's when it's confusing, when you can't see the end results. Moses fled because he identified with God's people. And he knew that the land that he was going to flee to was where his own people, where God's people were, not Egypt's power. And so Hebrews interprets Moses' choice like this. He refused to be known as Pharaoh's grandson. Therefore, he chose to identify with the suffering people. So that was an act of faith. And so he fled because he had already decided in his heart, I belong to God, not Pharaoh. I will not remain and serve Pharaoh. Flight wasn't an escape from destiny. It was the first step towards his God-given destiny. And so in Exodus 2, when he kills that Egyptian taskmaster, he tried to deliver Israel in his own strength. He sensed his calling from the beginning. But he was doing it the way Egypt solved problems, with violence, with authority. But he discovered that's not the right way. So his fleeing was he was fleeing his Egyptian identity. He was pursuing God's identity for his life. He realized his way was not going to work. He needed God's way. And so Moses' flight actually positioned him to hear God's voice. And so the writer of Hebrews looks at this as if there was an inerrant voice in Moses' spirit as a result of his choices which spoke to his faith, earlier decisions, choosing to identify with his own people. And as a result, in that moment, his reaction was one of faith, was get out of there. He was staying in step with the faith that was embedded in him. And so His faith brought him to a place where God could now truly commune with him and speak to him, a place of solitude and obscurity, excuse me, and direct encounter with God. So sometimes faith means leaving a toxic environment, breaking off toxic relationship. Moses' life is a reminder that sometimes God calls us out before he sends us back. We need to season out. Let's pick up and read on verse 28 to 29. 28 to 29, by faith, we take a large leap now. We're bypassing the calling in the wilderness. There's none of that's mentioned here. It leaps right over. It says, by faith, he kept the Passover, sprinkled the blood, so that the destroyer of the firstborn might not touch them. By faith, the people crossed the Red Sea as on dry land, but the Egyptians, when they attempted to do the same, were drowned. By faith, Moses put his confidence in the word of God. And the angel of God had said to him, you are to have every household, the leader of every household, slay a lamb, take that blood, dip it, hyssop branch in it, spatter it on the top and the sides of the doorpost, and then take your family inside, and you are to prepare that sacrificial lamb. And as you go through the ritual of eating that, you can do that in safety. And as a result of it, you will be saved. Moses accepted that. That was a step of faith. The crossing of the Red Sea, imagine that required something unimaginable. You've led 2 million people possibly, out of Egypt, with all the animals and all the possessions, and they're making their way along. You come to this impassable river. It's at the peak season. And what do? It's bursting its banks. And yet, God says, put your foot in that river, and when you do, you'll walk through. You see, sometimes God calls us to step up to what scares us completely to death. Ending a toxic relationship, coming out of a toxic workplace, applying for a job that you feel unqualified for, forgiving someone who hurt you when turning the other cheek, daring to trust the word of the Lord and begin tithing, returning to the Lord the first fruit when you're facing multitude of bills. I lived through that. You see, faith steps into the water before it parts. Then he goes on to say in verse 30, by faith the walls of Jericho fell down after they had been encircled for 7 days. Imagine. Some of the things they did seem so silly. I'm going to get this trained military militia to walk with me around the city walls every day for 6 days, and then go back home. And then the 7th day, we're going to do this. We're going to walk around these walls 7 times. And then when we get to the end, we're just going to have the priests, we're going to blow the trumpets. What an ingenious plan to take a city, right? It was absolutely ludicrous. But yet, they did what God had asked them to do. By faith. By faith. What has the Lord put in your heart? What's the faith steps he's asking you to take right now? The Lord is always speaking to us about next level stuff, about next steps, about next movement. There's time for time out. There's time for rest and reflection. But this is preparatory, always, to next steps. I'm faced with some things today that's incredible. It looks like impossibility. I've come in leadership to one of the most insurmountable walls that I've faced in my leadership of 18 years at Family Christian Center. Some of the resources that we have been having access to has been, the rug has been pulled out from under our feet, gone. We are walking into 2026 on one area of ministry where I need $1 million to keep it running, with possibly $200,000. $800,000 short. What's the next steps, Lord? You see, Jericho shows us that God works in the silence before he works in the public, oftentimes. But God's working. Hebrews 11:31, reading again. By faith, Rahab, the prostitute, did not perish with those who were disobedient, because she had given a friendly welcome to the spies. Rahab risked everything. She risked her reputation, but she yet was able to, she risked her life by sharing it even with her family, the plan that she was putting her confidence in. They could have leaked it. Someone could have leaked it. She could have been destroyed. Her family could have been taken and put to death. But they huddled in that little place under the assurance of her word. And she was tied to the words of those spies, those people who dropped in, crazy people spying out the area. They had nothing. There was no bill. There was no contract. There was nothing written. She had nothing. They didn't leave her their gold watch or their diamonds that they planned to come back and pick up. She had no endowment. There was nothing put in trust with them, with her, other than their word. Just hang the scarlet thread out through your window. And when we see it, we will come gather you and your family. It's incredible, isn't it? You see, faith takes courageous risk in the direction of God's word and God's voice. Miriam risked her comfort for a potential future in God's kingdom. Miriam Abraham chose Christ instead of safety in Sudan. This beautiful young lady was 8 months pregnant when she was arrested for her faith. She was charged with apostasy for refusing to renounce Christ. And the judge said to her, "Renounce your faith or be hanged." She refused. She was sentenced immediately to 100 lashes and death on May 15, 2014. She was 8 months pregnant. They took her to a cell and they shackled her. She gave birth while being shackled. Her newborn was immediately taken from her and given to her husband, but she was not permitted to see her child nor her husband. Because of international outcry, again, similar to the previous story, she was released. But she was willing to die. She had taken her stance. This, again, is Hebrews 11 level faith. Today, while many of you and I sit comfortably or our lives are not at risk, our brothers and sisters in various parts of the world, and maybe even in some of the parts that this video is going into, because we are into 190 nations plus, your lives are at risk, some of you. You're incredible men and women of God. You are Hebrew 11 saints. We bow to you and acknowledge the tremendous faith that you have, and we don't bow in worship, we bow in honor and recognition that you are amazing people. But for many of us here in the West, we will never face that, or at least we may not, although things are changing dramatically for us here. Let's read on. Hebrews 11. And what more shall I say? For time would fail. It's falling short on us right now, and it's falling short here in the writer. He says, and time would fail me to tell of Gideon, Barak, Samson, Jephthah, of David and Samuel and the prophets, who through faith conquered kingdoms, enforced justice, obtained promises, stopped the mouths of lions, quenched the power of fire, escaped the edge of the sword, were made strong out of weakness, became mighty in war, putting foreign armies to flight. Verse 32. Women received back their dead by resurrection. Some were tortured, refusing to accept release, so that they might rise again to a better life. Others suffered mockings and flogging, and even chains and imprisonment. They were stoned, they were sawn in two, they were killed with the sword. They went about in skins of sheep and goats, destitute, afflicted, mistreated, of whom the world was not worthy, wandering about in deserts and mountains and in dens and caves of the earth. It's just incredible. It's incredible what people have endured for the sake of the gospel and the sake of their faith. Some were delivered. Some were tortured. Some were victorious. Some were sawn in two. Outcomes don't measure faith. God has not promised us that our steps of faith are going to always be comfortable or that we're going to land in a safe place. No, that's a better ever after world. That's an American version of things, a Western version of things, if you would. Faith is measured by obedience. And if obedience results in death, if it results in less, it doesn't matter. That's not the test. That's not the true merit test. The test is whether you obey. Jesus said to obey is better than sacrifice. 2 Christians pray for healing. One is healed, one dies in faith. Both honor God, and God is glorified in both situations. You see, faith is not God delivering us from everything. It's trusting God in everything. Oftentimes it takes more faith to trust God in your difficult situation than it does to be delivered from that situation. Day by day grind, trusting Him to see you through, to give you the grace for today. Let's wrap up chapter 11. And all these, though commended through their faith, did not receive what was promised, since God had provided something better for us, that apart from us they should not be made perfect. In other words, their completion will occur at the same time that our completion occurs. Faith lives for something better. Faith looks into the distant future, into God's eternal kingdom. Faith is not glamorous. It's not easy. It's not a shortcut to success. It's the courage to walk with God when everyone else walks away. There are a lot of people today abandoning their faith, walking away, giving up. No. Faith is the courage to walk with God when everyone else walks away. You have that kind of faith? Father, I pray today that you would grant us the grace to be that kind of person, the person, Lord, who will walk with you when everyone else walks away. That is Hebrews 11 faith. God bless you. We come back next week to pick up on Hebrews 12. Have a wonderful week.
Thanks for listening to Encountering the Divine today. Take one thought with you. Try it in the everyday. Bring it up over coffee. Write it down. If the podcast helps you, follow the show, leave a quick review, or share this with a friend. To give, visit familychristiancenter.org/giving. To connect, you can reach Pastor Edwin at edwinrhoda@gmail.com. Thanks for being here. We'll leave it here for now. See you next